Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. In the first major test for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, the Conservative Party has lost control of 48 councils in England and more than 1,000 seats. With just 2 councils still left to declare the results of yesterday's local election vote, Labour has gained 22 councils so far and is now the largest political party at local government level. The Liberal Democrats have gained 12 councils, and the Green Party has won their first outright majority of a council for the first time, securing Mid-Suffolk. Rishi Sunak has admitted the results are disappointing, while Sir Keir Starmer and Sir Ed Davey celebrated their wins.
It's always disappointing to lose hard-working Conservative councillors, their friends, their colleagues, and I'm so grateful to them for everything. What I am going to carry on doing is delivering on the people's priorities, halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the boats.
Same story in Plymouth, in Stoke, up in Middlesbrough, and these are the key battlegrounds as we go into the next election. And make no mistake, this means that we are on course for a Labour majority at the next election.
Fantastic results for the Liberal Democrats, groundbreaking results. People have lost trust with the Conservatives. They think they lack integrity, that they don't care about people, and they're just out of touch. So I think we've benefited from a positive vote for the Liberal Democrats and a vote from lifelong Conservatives who won't vote Conservative again.
On the eve of the King's coronation, the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales have greeted well-wishers on the Mall.
Congratulations, you look much younger in the flesh. And best of luck for tomorrow.
King Charles made a surprise appearance to meet with some of the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace. William and Kate joined the King for the walkabout. They praised the party atmosphere and described the coronation as a great moment of celebration. The royalists, who've been camping out hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend, described it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
We were literally just walking back to the hotel and then we just saw everybody cheering and came over and then saw the King.
And I got a shake of the hand.
You got a shake of the hand?
Through the crowd and I got a shake of the hand.
I think this is Britain at its best, you know. Everybody's nattering to everybody. There's no stiff upper lip. It's just lovely.
We just wanted to be a part of history and enjoy the nobody does it better than the British. So we wanted to see all the excitement and be a part of it.
And people planning to travel by train this weekend will hear a very special message.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
Wherever you are travelling, we hope you have a safe and pleasant journey.
And remember, please mind the gap.
The King and Queen Consort have recorded the famous Mind the Gap announcement for the coronation. It'll be played at every railway and underground station across the UK. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News now, though. It's time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle, and joining me this evening to suck the marrow from Saturday's newspapers are comedic carnivores Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. How are you both?
Very good, mate.
You're more an omnivore than a carnivore, aren't you, Josh?
I don't know the difference.
Well, an omnivore would eat vegetables and meat.
No, I'm keto, mate. So
you're doing keto, yeah.
Although today's my last day.
That's why you're so svelte at the moment. How are you, Nick? You're right.
I'm well. I'm looking forward to talking about the coronation in 5 different ways.
Well, yes, because it will be dominating lots of the front covers, and we're going to check that out right now. Let's crack on with Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail is leading with his day of destiny, with an old picture of Charles there. Telegraph has, I come not to be served, but to serve. Guardian, now there you go, politics, crushing result for the Tories, and of course we're going to be covering that as well. The Mirror has, he will not only wear the crown, he will bear the weight of destiny and the hopes of a nation. The Times, they also go with King's Day of Destiny. And finally, the Daily Star, going in a slightly different direction with a picture of a big dog. And this is sausages, whatever that means. Those were your front pages. OK, so we're going to kick off with The Guardian, Josh, because this is the only non-coronation front cover we've gone with.
Some actual news.
Some news, that's right.
We do have news later on.
Yes.
We've got lots of news, but on the front page, this is the only bit of news that we could find. So, crushing result for Tories. Most of the results are in. Tories have lost about, coming up to 1,000 seats.
Yes.
Labour has got nearly 500, and... it's a big deal. Yeah, it's going to be more probably ultimately, and it's the first time that Labour is now the biggest party in local government since 2002.
So it's a big success story for Starmer, and of course his big motivation was to try and win back Brexit voting Britain, you know, the fact that he was the architect of the People's Referendum pledge in the Labour manifesto, which was a bit of a disaster. But it does seem like he has successfully won round those very people that his party had alienated.
Yeah, I mean, it's an indicator, and Labour is saying, look, if it goes the same way when it comes to a national election, this means that they will get the majority. That's not a guarantee that that's necessarily going to happen, but it's definitely a sign that it's a sign of two things. It's a sign for me, this is my political interpretation because I'm a comedian who knows very little.
Yeah, we don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But as far as I can tell, it seems to be partly just Tories destroying the country over the last decade or so, and it also seems to be that Labour has detoxified, and that is down to Keir Starmer. So
this is the question, Nick, isn't it? To what extent is this the Tories' loss rather than Labour's gain? You know, it feels like they've completely shot themselves in the foot.
It's the former because Lib Dems and Greens have also gained a lot. So I resent the idea it's this great Starmer victory, although it is a big loss for the Tories. So last I checked, the Conservatives have lost 962. They're on course to lose over 1,000. Labour have gone up 632. So it's more than the Guardian's front page saying, because it's been updated. Lib Dems up 417, Greens up 199.
Yeah, so everyone's going up except the Tories.
Exactly. So it's just a vote for anyone else, and because people hate the Tories now. And the Tories were saying, you know, we might expect to lose 1,000, but they would have been secretly hoping, obviously, for something like 500 to 700 is what I heard. Yeah. And Labour was saying we'd be happy with 400, but obviously they wouldn't have been. They wanted a lot more, which they've got. And the question is, like Josh was saying, what's the cause? And there's millions of causes we could cite. There's an argument within the Tories about whether it was what Sunak called the box set drama of the various leaders, but the others,
Partygate type thing.
And no, the sort of I think he means the sort of constant changing of leaders and so on. I have to check that. Whereas others are saying, no, it's Rishi's fault for knifing their most successful leader, meaning Boris.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, what is interesting, what this does reveal, and what we've known for a while now based on polling, is that actually most Conservative supporters are wary of the Conservative Party at the moment. So they don't even have their sort of traditional core base that they can rely on, in a way that Labour lost their core base when they lost the Red Wall. The Tories have a similar kind of situation now.
And it's always cyclical anyway. But the other interesting thing is that when Starmer came in, only a couple of years ago, everyone was like, oh, he's just a lame duck.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to be the sort of sacrifice before the actual Labour leader comes in. But it's all happened very quickly.
But I have to say, I mean, Starmer, this is a personal opinion, but Starmer has never struck me as particularly charismatic. I don't mean to be that in a mean way.
No.
I just think he doesn't feel presidential in the way that a Blair or a Thatcher felt.
I agree with you, but at the same time, he has been pretty smart in terms of he's sort of laid low somewhat. He's keeping his cards close to his chest.
Yeah.
And I actually think I quite like him.
So here's the question, Nick, because I know you're not too enamoured of the current Conservative government. On the other hand, are you looking forward to a Starmer government?
No, I was saying this to somebody the other night. Starmer's going to be far worse, even than the Conservatives, who I hate, this current Conservative Party. I mean, Johnny Mercer lost, and I thought it was a good thing because he threw Roger Scruton under the bus. So, as you say, people who are actually Conservative can't stand this Tory party, which is they see as a basically socialist party, completely fake Conservative party, in name only. But Starmer, incredibly, will be even worse. I was speaking to someone, the more sort of Remainer, I can't say North London blob because people think it's an anti-Semitic reference, but I simply mean Remainer, a hardcore Remainer who works in the extended deep state, and he was saying that, yeah, Starmer will get in, he'll rejoin the EU and everything will be great. Now, I'd love it if Starmer was really going to solve all our problems, but of course he definitely won't. It'll be just as bad on economic things or worse, and then it'll be much worse on social things and wokeness and so on.
And of course, Josh, actually, it can't be the case that Starmer will bring us back into the EU. He's actually been very, very specific.
Very, very clear
that
about
he won't
it. Yeah,
do that.
absolutely.
You know? I mean,
if that did happen, it would be generations away, and I don't think it would ever happen necessarily.
Well, just so you know, people are banking on that in the
I think
that
the blob or whatever. I think the point is he's been very clear about it, and also, you know what? I think he's fundamentally a decent human being. He comes from a very somewhat humble background, and I think he wants to do good with this country. And I think we need someone like him to come in and actually bring more balance back to the force.
Wasn't his dad a toolmaker or something?
Yeah, well, he was.
He has mentioned that.
Is he really decent? He keeps changing his mind. There's videos of him just lying and changing his mind so many times.
His dad wasn't a toolmaker?
I don't think
no, not on that, on virtually everything else.
His dad was a toolmaker, I think, but didn't he own the factory? I think that was the... He owned the business.
Okay, well,
Starmer's rubbish. It's just that the Tories are such a disaster. I think that's what it is.
OK, well, look, we'll never agree on that, will we? Everyone's got a different opinion. We're going to move on to the Daily Mail, Saturday's Daily Mail. This is, of course, the only story in town, the Coronation. So, Nick, off you go.
The Mail goes with his day of destiny, and they have a picture of Charles, aged 20, at his investiture.
I thought it was a Photoshop. I thought they'd
You thought they just airbrushed him so well.
I thought they'd just make him look younger.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just taken Botox.
It's a deep fake.
And
they've sort of gone with the angle that he's been waiting 70+ years, longest serving heir. They talk also about Queen Camilla, and they say the once unthinkable has become a reality, and that's I think that they meant Queen Camilla in that case. And I think in general, as we see from the next 6 headlines we're about to do, the coronation is a bigger deal than some people have been claiming. We've been seeing these polls leading up to it. People don't care about the coronation, people don't care about the monarchy. And what you'll find is, as it approaches, it's just going to be massive anyway, and that's going to all
And of course, let's not forget, internationally, this is going to be a big deal. You know, I heard... Who's the pop star who's going to be performing there? Is it Lionel Richie?
Yeah.
Was talking
and Katy Perry.
Was talking about it earlier on TV and was saying, you know, this is so monumental in international terms. And I think because a lot of people here don't like Charles and Camilla and they prefer Kate and William, and so you haven't got that real sort of fervid excitement, people forget that this is going to be a big deal.
Well, I think it's going to be a bigger deal internationally. And I mean, I'm speaking personally, and through what limited friends I have, but no one's like genuinely excited about this. I went to my kids' school today for assembly in the afternoon, and they did a little God Save the King rendition, and they've been all dressing up. They're pretty excited about it, but you're not seeing much bunting around. It's not like when you say the excitement's building up. I mean, it's here. I mean, it's going to happen tomorrow, and I don't really feel that people are that bothered.
No, well, they've gone with this very austere cover on the Mail, you know, his day of destiny.
Also,
I mean, it's an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because, you know, he has always implied that he didn't really want this, I suppose.
Really?
Insofar as when the Queen died, he was saying, this is actually quite terrifying for me. This is something I don't...
Yeah, but that's probably what his speechwriters said to humanise it.
Oh, do you think?
No, just because he's quite sensitive and a bit shy, that's all that means.
Well, I don't know, but
I don't envy it. I don't think it's a...
But I'm more interested also whether the papers are banking on people buying these as souvenir issues.
Oh,
so there's this.
Does anyone buy a souvenir edition of a paper?
Well, they used to.
Did
certainly,
they?
yeah. People would always buy. So this is, I think, that they're sort of like hoping that people. So they're like, this is your definitive guide by Britain's finest royal writers, and that is a damning praise.
Yep.
To be the finest royal.
Well, how come their souvenir edition is still only $140, whereas the Mirror, just normal Mirror, is $190?
So this is the souvenir edition next on the Mirror, and they've gone full on with the crown.
Oh, that's also a souvenir.
It's a picture of a crown.
And Coronation souvenir edition. He will not only wear the crown, he will bear the weight of history and the hopes of a nation. No, I'm maybe stretching a little bit there. So for them, it's a solitary thing. It's quite interesting. I mean, the Mirror, obviously, somewhat left-wing newspaper.
Yes.
And they seem to be sort of going full on behind him.
This is interesting, isn't it? The left and the right do seem to be uniting in terms of no one's taking a full-on Republican approach, apart from the Guardian by just not really covering it in the way that everyone else.
Well, they did about half of their.
They did half the page, but the rest of the page was more about how the Tories are being crushed.
Yeah.
So even at this time, they're really going with the political angle. The crown, I mean, that's quite a nice symbolic approach to this, I'd say.
Like you say, you might have expected the Mirror to go a bit more Republican, but actually they've gone big. They're charging the most of any of these papers, and they're cashing in, and they've gone sort of red wall. You know, they're probably assuming a lot of their readers are still socially conservative.
Very likely. Now, but the Sun has sort of taken the crown motif and doubled it up with
double crown
with a his and hers.
They thrashed the Mirror.
So they've actually beaten the mirror there.
Yeah, so
I
actually
would
giving
say.
a bit of a nod to Camilla there, aren't they? And they've actually got a picture of her on the front there.
It looks very beautiful, the two crowns together there. But there's not really much analysis we can do of the crown, is there?
Not really, but I do think that there's an interesting thing now. I didn't know that she was now officially the Queen and not the Queen Consort. I feel like somewhat duped by this whole process. I thought like they sort of... I know it's a silly thing. I don't want to go like down COVID conspiracy thing, you know, but it just feels like...
Leave that to Nick, for
No,
goodness sake.
but it feels like they put this out there before the Queen died, that now she was going to be the Queen Consort.
Right.
And it feels like they've had this cleverly, or not even that clever, just they've laid this plan out.
A cunning plan.
Sorry?
A cunning plan.
Yeah, a cunning
They
plan.
start with Queen. She's just a Queen Consort. She's not really the Queen.
Yeah, she's not the Queen, don't worry.
And now she's the Queen.
Yeah, to be fair to Camilla, I think she has been rehabilitated quite successfully. I mean, I think we forget how much people really didn't like her.
How much is that them sort of, like, manipulating us, or are we just idiots?
No, yeah, Josh had been right. If after the actual Queen had died and then everyone had gone, by the way, Camilla's now Queen, everyone would have hated it.
Yeah.
And they've sort of led us into it gently.
But I sort of do feel for her, you know, because she was trapped in... She was in this relationship where she was the other woman, whereas, of course, and Charles always loved her.
Poor her.
Well, I mean...
Being the other woman. But...
That's not nice, Josh.
Look,
have you ever been the other woman? Have you ever? You don't know what you're talking about. It's horrible.
You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I need to get some more life experience. But I just feel somewhat manipulated. That's all I'm saying.
OK. All right. Well, let's move on now to the Express. Are we going to do... No, we're not.
Oh,
We've actually run out of time.
Oh, my gosh, I've got so much more to say on this.
I know you do, Josh.
It's quite similar, just for the viewer. It was more crowns and thrones. It looked a bit like Game of Thrones there.
They've also gone with the headline Day of Destiny. Destiny seems to be the motif of a lot of the front covers going on there. OK, so that is the front pages gnawed apart. Do join us after a quick breather where we're going to be discussing policemen's beards. Well, I don't need to say any more. That's all you need. Why wouldn't you come back? Right, see you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle. My book has just come out in paperback. He's Josh Howie. He doesn't have another product to promote. And he's Nick Dixon. He's got a podcast.
Two podcasts. Yeah, Weekly Skeptic and The Current Thing.
And you never mention them. That's the great thing about you.
Weekly Skeptic is number 16th for British political podcasts on Apple.
Yeah, there we go. I've given you the opportunity.
I'm going to start a podcast just so I can mention something. I just want something to mention.
I think you should start a podcast and beat Nick's podcast. That would be brilliant.
It's very hard to do.
Unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
OK, well, we will kick off with Saturday's Independent. Josh, was the election a good excuse to get new headshots done?
Indeed. Let's do some... any excuse, really. I don't need that much of an excuse. So, Watchdog to examine voter ID challenges that led to people being turned away. Now, they haven't really come up with some exact numbers, but it doesn't seem like a huge amount. And there's some complaints before that they were sort of saying that this is going to benefit the Tories, but which I sort of always felt was like a racist, somewhat racist or dodgy idea. Like I think the idea was that people, or not but prejudice in that people who were maybe not as economically...
well, they don't know how to use ID.
Don't have passports, or people from ethnic minorities who would be more likely to vote for Labour wouldn't have a driver's licence.
Well, there was a video that was during the American election where someone was going around asking ethnic minority people in an area where basically the Democrats have been saying this is racist against black people, and they were asking these people and saying, do black people find it hard to get ID? And they were saying this is so patronising and racist and awful.
It's totally condescending, and I think. I don't see a problem here with this ID thing. In the 46 out of 47 Western democracies, I believe, already have self-ID. I mean, have not self-ID. Too much trans stuff.
But the thing is, I always used to find it a bit weird that I would go into a polling station, they just find your name and cross it out. It's like, well, that could be anyone. But on the other hand, Nick, it doesn't... Was there actually really much of a problem with fraud of this kind?
Well, yeah, as you say, the concern was from Labour because they were worried their voters are not smart enough to follow basic rules. And you're saying it's racist, it actually comes from, in America, it comes from the Democrats. They're worried about voter ID. They're the ones campaigning against it, so they're the ones saying that their voters can't manage it. So here it's been less of an issue, like you say. I think it's maybe a bit of an issue, and we could slide into American-style sort of election games, but we haven't so much for now. But yeah, like you say, we're in a world where you seem to have to produce your passport for all kinds of things all the time, so it's not really a massive deal in that light. I'm against all sorts of digital IDs and COVID passports and all Blair's mad ideas, but this doesn't really seem like
if they had to scan a barcode on your forehead or something satanic like that, I'd be
And also, if it stops the Lib Dems from claiming it's a stolen election and we should all go down to Whitehall and do an insurrection.
I would love for Ed Davey to do that. It would be worth it just to see him do it.
So
and the kind of people that would turn up.
But the interesting thing is that they're saying there's actually evidence that it might have helped Labour.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's fine, bring it on.
Yeah, OK. Well, Saturday's Express next. Nick, they think it's all over, and it is. It's a little football reference for you there, but you didn't think I could do that?
Yeah, that was good. It's from 1966. So WHO officially declares COVID is not a global health emergency in dramatic end, a pandemic, dramatic end, just many years later than everyone had already ended it. It's like that meme with the thumbs up. You see the one where the guys are just talking and someone says something, they just do a thumbs up and carry on talking and ignore them. It's like, bro, we knew it was over. We didn't really need you to say this. But it's mad, I mean, to think that it's only just officially over. And the United States are only just waiving the vaccine requirement on May 11th. Absolute madness. Because really, it's been over for ages. But this is Tedros, Dr. Tedros, can't say his surname. And he's saying it doesn't mean COVID is no longer a threat, but he's ending it as an official global emergency. And he says it's changed our world and it's changed us. And that is indisputable. I mean, we've learned how easily the West will descend into authoritarianism. And I know so many people who are kind of, their worldview is shattered by this and they've never really recovered. I'm all right because I was already so extremely sceptical anyway. None of it surprised me.
Yeah, it does feel weird. Every now and then I have to check myself. When I go to a show or something, I'm in a theatre full of people, I think, it's just gone. There's no one who even thinks about this anymore. And it's an odd...
The crazy thing is that there are still variations out, there are variants out there. There are still, like, numbers are supposedly high and whatnot. And you're just wondering what's really changed is our perception of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what is different. But also, I mean, I'm one of these people who's been somewhat, I don't want to say
red pilled. There it is. I knew you'd been
I don't even know what the real definition is. But
Josh is coming over.
You keep on going about these bloody red pills. I mean, I've seen The Matrix. But at the same time, I am angry because I don't feel like there was honesty through the thing. And then it's like to question any of the narrative somehow puts you out to become someone kind of crank nowadays. Just to question, not just the science but the implementation of these policies.
Yes.
And if we're not going to actually have an honest appraisal and look at what happened, then how are we ever going to learn?
That will be interesting whether we do have that assessment now, because more and more in this world, this new world now where people just mingle and go about, there's no masks anywhere. Yeah. It does make us all think, was lockdown a good idea? Should we have just been shielding the vulnerable to begin with? And that, Which
was the initial plan.
Right.
Was to protect the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And in terms of did we protect who are the other most vulnerable? Well, children, they didn't get protected in terms of their education, their future. There's a lot. It's still frustrating. It may be over, and that's great, but I think the ramifications still obviously with us, and we need to learn.
But it is good, isn't it, Nick, that the WHO are saying officially it is. It's nice to hear them say that.
Yeah, it's better than them saying it's still not over.
Yeah.
But we all knew it was over a while ago. And the worry is, what will they do next time? Let's say there's another virus comes out. Let's say Gates releases another one. What will they do? That's just a little joke, guys. What will they do? But what would they do next time? I don't trust these organisations to not do the similar kind of things again.
I think actually if there was a next time, they wouldn't be able to be as stringent with it, because we've seen how that's not necessarily.
You say that, but you look at those polls, and lockdowns still have all kinds of support. Young people, especially, are saying we didn't lock down hard enough. Still in polls now.
They go to school.
Yeah, but 5 billion people have had one dose of the vaccine. That is a lot of people who have chips in their bodies.
Right, we're going to move on before we go down. Nick actually takes that bone and runs with it.
Don't clip that Matthew Sweet.
OK, on to the Times now.
Safe and effective.
Josh, this next story is one of your 3 specialist subjects, and it's not anti-Semitism or the gender-critical debate, so it must be...
Beards! Topic number 3, speciality. Beards. So Police Scotland's no beard rule will force officers to shave twice a day, and that's supposedly this policy is going to be introduced on May 29th. This is just a brilliant story. Essentially, it seems like they bought all these FFP3 masks, which are the ones that actually cling to your face and supposedly work.
Yeah, they're really tight.
The ones that work as opposed to the ones that everybody else wore and we were told worked, but, there's no real science to back it up. They had some effect. And... But because they spent all this money on these masks, they're still pushing through this policy, I guess, so they can seem to be using them.
When are they going to have to wear these masks?
I know, well, that's what's so ridiculous about it. But it's like they're sort of, the horse is bolted and they're sort of still going through with it. And, of course, a lot of police officers have beards, policemen and women, allowed to call them, and they don't want to shave their beards.
So let me get this right. So they have to shave twice a day because even with stubble, the masks don't work.
Yeah.
But shouldn't, Nick, I mean, you're bearded as well.
Thank you.
It's a very nice beard, I should say. Do you use oil on that?
Well, Lewis Schaefer said it was unattractive, but carry on.
Yeah, but Lewis Schaefer is not the best assessor of these kind of things, aesthetic beauty, that kind of thing. I think you look very Adonis-like.
Thank you.
But could you tell me, whether you think policemen generally ought to be bearded, or does it kind of suggest a lack of dignity?
They should be allowed to be bearded. This is absurd. The fact they're going to have to shave twice a day in some cases, absolute waste of time. And as you say, the women as well, especially being Scotland, with Sturgeon thinks men are women. So, who knows who's going to be... Everyone's going to be shaving, and it's going to be very complicated.
When are they going to shave, anyway?
Well, exactly. And I thought if it was a discipline thing, I could kind of get behind it. Like, there's a new guy come in, everyone's shaving. But it's because of these stupid masks and this hygiene nonsense, which is unnecessary. And I have to say, it's good to see that the president of the British Beard Club has come out against it. He may have a vested interest.
There's a British Beard Club.
Yeah, David Dade,
our leader.
And he's coming.
BBC.
And he says a bearded man, especially one of authority, carries an air of relaxed friendliness. To be fair, he's a touch biased. He is the president of the Beard Club.
He's right.
He's absolutely right.
He's not right, because actually I think studies show that people mistrust beards. They think it's trying to hide something.
How dare you?
I'm trying to hide my fat face.
Oh, it's a double chin issue.
Yes. And what about... and on a serious note, what about Muslims? Don't they have to have a beard?
Yeah, and Jews. We have beards as well.
I don't think you have to, though, do you?
Well, rabbi, I mean, it's part of the look. It's part of the... That's what I'm going for. I'm trying to just look cleverer than I am.
I'm not sure if Muslims, just to clarify, I'm not sure they have to, but there is something where... Yeah, so it is unfair. And people are... 4 officers are suing them.
Really?
So, yeah.
Right. enough of the beard chat.
More.
No more beards. No more. So we're going to move on now. Tragic story next in The Guardian. But Nick, does The Guardian have an agenda on this one?
Of course they do, Andy. What a ridiculous question. So this is Jordan Neely, as I'm sure you've seen, and the headline they've gone with is "Man Killed by Rider's Chokehold Was Talented Dancer." And of course they leave out the fact he was arrested 44 times. So he was killed by this person putting him in a chokehold. I'm sure you've seen the story. He was getting violent and threatening. And The Guardian is doing a kind of puff piece hagiography on him, trying to sort of say he was just a perfect, great guy. Look, he had problems. His mother died. He went off the rails, and it is very sad. But he did have an open felony charge and a warrant for his arrest for assaulting a 67-year-old woman. He was violent. He was threatening violence. He'd been arrested 44 times, as I say. And The Guardian want a new George Floyd. And it's kind of shameful the way they're trying to make this happen. They want a world... And you read the piece, absolutely ludicrous, all about how amazing and great he was and how perfect he was. The Guardian want a world where the criminal is the victim, and they side with the criminal. In a world where you can't stop a criminal, or you're the problem. And
it's very. I mean, of course, it's horrible when anyone dies, and I don't want to get into the debate about whether the guy who held him in the chokehold should have, used excessive force. I don't know what happened there. I wasn't there, and there were 3 men involved. But it has been fascinating, Josh, watching on social media, people just playing old clips of him doing Michael Jackson impersonations, as though that's all this was. It was a Michael Jackson impersonator, lovely guy. He had, like Nick said, been arrested 44 times. There's also footage of him just attacking people.
Yeah, and swearing at them and
these people were in a difficult position where they had to try and restrain him because he was threatening people. Yeah. Obviously...
Someone posted online that he'd pushed them towards the tracks.
No, that's a... Oh, well, there's...
They posted an account saying...
OK, well, there's someone else... This is just also shows the misinformation out there. Right. Someone put up a video of a man pushing someone into a train, and they were saying, but actually it turns out it wasn't him. So there is this stuff out, but
we don't know, do we?
No, we don't know. And what's really tragic here, as you say, his mother was actually murdered.
Yeah.
And he had mental health issues.
Clearly he was failed as well.
And he was failed by the state. Yeah. But, supposedly he went to jail for 4 months for attempted kidnap of a 7-year-old girl, pulling her down the street.
Right.
Like, he had mental health issues. He wasn't... It doesn't sound like a great human being. And he obviously...
Well, it certainly doesn't look like the 3 guys who restrained him were trying to go out their way. They were trying to restrain him because they were scared of what he might do to someone.
Well, that's it. But the other thing, just to read this, but to just make it more about what the article is like they don't mention any of this other history. They go on about, like, someone who met him, his neighbour, and someone saying, oh, he was a nice person, he wasn't aggressive or violent, when the evidence was he could be aggressive and violent.
So that's an interesting question, though. Why doesn't The Guardian mention those factors when everyone can easily access
Well, that's the thing. Nowadays, you can access it.
Right, that's my point.
This is another thing about being peaked. This reminds me of that terrible WeSpar article that they wrote 3 years ago, where they sort of almost pretended this event, this thing of this black woman who was, and her 6-year-old daughter, who were exposed to in this sauna by supposedly a trans woman. Turns out it was a sex offender. But the article basically made out that she was inventing it.
And it was a hoax.
Look, there was a hoax and all this stuff. But anybody online could see the other narrative.
And that's the question, Nick, isn't it? It's like, I understand in a world without the internet why newspapers like The Guardian that have an activist agenda would misrepresent, because their readers probably won't see the other stuff. But these days, we can see they're lying, or at least misrepresenting.
I know, but I think they're just banking on creating enough noise. Anyway, we've seen AOC online. She's saying this guy's a murderer. He hasn't had any kind of trial. She's stoking division. I think The Guardian is going for the same thing. They've got their guy. They've got their narrative. I mean, one of the people restraining him was a black guy as well. That doesn't matter. They've made it into another... Exactly. It's another race war. People are so sick of it. They're sick of certain races being demonised, certain races being deified in this crude way. It's not reality, and this is a disgusting
and this is just a tragic story, however way you...
Of course it is, but it is another reminder that you almost nowadays, from whatever you get your news source, you have to also go and check that news source.
I always do now.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, left or right.
And The Guardian is counting on people who aren't on Twitter like us all the time and whatever. And then this is what they think.
OK, well, we're at the halfway point of the show. It's all cheeky Friday night fun from here on in. We're going to be talking about porn bans, condom sizes. That's a story for you, Josh.
Thank you.
And NHS trans algorithms, whatever that means. See you in a sec.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5.
Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. We're going to go straight into the Mail. What are the SNP up to now, Nick?
It's another terrible idea from the SNP. So SNP plans to abolish trial by jury in rape cases fall into disarray as more than 500 lawyers in Edinburgh and Glasgow vow to boycott move because it's a terrible, stupid idea. So the Glasgow Bar Association was overwhelmingly in favour of boycotting the single-judge pilot court, as they're calling it. The Edinburgh Bar Association said trial by jury is a cornerstone of our justice system. Now, the idea behind it is, OK, there's these things like rape myths. So a jury has all these preconceived ideas about rape, and they, oh, well, maybe she wasn't, blah, blah, or maybe they have sort of different prejudices, and they were trying to get around it. But the problem is, when you just have one person judging you, of course it's less fair.
And why wouldn't that person have prejudice?
Well, exactly. So it's kind of...
They'd be trained.
It's an SNP authoritarian type idea, used in Russia, used in Nazi Germany, as people have pointed out. And obviously, yes, it'd be just as bad to have people falsely accused who, yes, it's a terrible idea, but luckily people are realising that it's not going to work.
I understand the point that rape convictions are low and it's a very difficult thing to prove in court because it comes down to testimony rather than material evidence in a lot of cases. But the solution surely isn't to just completely obliterate due process and just have one judge, because we still need... Surely in a murder case, the jury can have prejudices as well.
Well, exactly. But also, trial by jury is a cornerstone of our justice system. This is what one of the bar associations say. And the other thing is, by getting on just using one judge to choose it, the idea is that it's even worse. The idea is even worse than that, because the judge would actually be biased. The judges will be marked on how many cases they convict.
Oh, yes.
So they'd actually be...
There'd be an incentive.
Incentive, yes, that's the word I was looking for, to convict. which is even worse.
There's all sorts of cases in Scotland which don't get a jury. You know, in fact, our friend Marcus Meakin, who was known as Count Dankula, he didn't have a jury in his trial, and the judge had clearly taken against him from the start, or at least that's how it seemed to me. So it's not good. It's not, like, I do think we have to. I know the jury system isn't perfect because juries can get it wrong as well, but it's better than nothing, isn't it? To have 12 different voices, 12 different
certainly with
perceptions.
Something as serious as this. But as you said before, the real problem is the fact that rape convictions are so historically low, and not even just the convictions, but the people who are being charged.
Yeah, and I do have sympathy with that insofar as there will be a lot of people who've committed sexual assault getting away with it, which is not a comfortable idea. But on the other hand,
the majority.
The way the justice system works, though, is that people are going to prison for things they haven't done. That's also, well, that should be the priority we have to avoid, isn't it? Anyway, we're going to move on now. This is The Guardian, and Josh, this article gets suspiciously close to saying that men and women are different. That's not like The Guardian.
I know, this is crazy. Science? What?
What's going on?
NHS treatment algorithms are not taking transgender patients into account. So this is a group of UK doctors and medical students. They've issued a warning because essentially when people are saying, oh, I'm now a woman or I'm now a man, against whatever their birth sex is, there are medical implications that arise from that. And particularly, you can get denied dialysis for kidney problems. There are a whole load of stuff that...
there's all sorts of reasons why the doctor needs to know what biological sex you are.
Yeah, and there's different diseases that might be at risk. So these factors are normally like body weight, alcohol clearance rates, kidney functions and whatever. Those are all on a scale of your sex.
But isn't this weird that The Guardian is spinning this like we're failing trans people? Right, really, shouldn't it be saying, look, we need to, as medical practitioners, be able to record your biological sex? And, maybe the solution is that for those who identify as a different sex, they record your gender identity as well, but that we all have our biological sex recorded in the NHS document. Surely, Nick?
Yeah, well, exactly. You're saying the Guardian's acknowledging reality, but I'm not sure they are. They're just putting this angle that there's a gap in access to appropriate medical care and trans people are falling through the cracks. That's the angle they've gone with, more than the sex is real. But yeah, obviously you should base it on someone's biological sex, unless there's some case where maybe if you've taken enough testosterone or something, maybe that becomes relevant medically. I don't know.
I mean, the issue with this is, so the NHS... we each have an NHS number, right? And in that number is encoded our biological sex. But since their policy has changed, you are allowed to contact the NHS and say, I want my number to change so that the doctor thinks I'm a different sex, right? Now, that has material problems. It means you don't get invited for smear tests or whatever. It means
It means there's a lot more women who are getting testicular cancer.
Well, there's that as well, which is never good. No. Not a nice thing to get. But it is a ridiculous thing, isn't it? And like I say, I think there would be a way to appease everyone, which would be to list gender identity for those who believe they have one, which is probably less than 1% of the population, and biological sex for everyone. Surely.
But that would probably mean, getting a new printer or something. That's probably some reason they don't want to do it.
And actually, to be fair, the budget is pretty tight. Yeah, fair enough. Didn't think of that. Next, we have The Express. And Nick, if you're in Utah, you better get a VPN if you want to see a VPL.
Nice. I don't quite get it, but this is fascinating. Yeah, surge in VPN demand by 967% following statewide adult site ban. Adult site definitely being a heavy euphemism there. So Utah has basically blocked Pornhub, and obviously all the...
What's that? What is that?
It's an internet site, Andrew, that specialises in
Scotland as well.
Adult content.
Pornography.
I've never seen it, but I learned about it tonight from this article.
Yeah.
And it sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
But obviously, because people are addicted to porn, they've gone mad and just bought loads of VPNs, and it's gone up 967%. There was a spike.
We should say, by the way, what VPNs are.
They're a virtual private network where people can't see what you're searching.
So in other words, you can get round all these blocks online.
And VPL is visible panty line.
Yeah, VPL is visible.
I didn't know that one. So
you're so pure and innocent,
Christian.
Nick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a Christian. So, but the other thing is,
well, this is a Christian state.
Well, that's it. It's a Mormon state, in fact. I mean, Utah was massive for the Mormons, and this has come from... I think the Mormons are involved in this. So it says members of the Church of the Latter-day Saints have recently and historically represented... Blah, blah, yeah. Utah was considered the online porn capital, so there seems to be an unfortunate link between...
There is a correlation between oppressive religious areas of the world and high consumption of pornography.
You could make that argument. And
it's true.
In other places, they've brought in this age requirement. You've got to put in your age, which people don't want to do, of course, because then, you're putting in your details, and also you can be hacked and all sorts of things. But that led to a spike in demand, but not as great as the spike from just banning Pornhub, which everything went crazy.
Okay.
It's interesting, but there's Louisiana, like you said, brought in a thing, but their rule was really interesting because it's like if a site had at least 33.33% pornographic material, then you'd need this conduct sort of age verification thing. So what I was thinking was maybe these sites can invest in other content to bring the porn element down, and maybe they might want to sort of invest in a comedy pilot idea that I have. I'm just saying that might help, or do like.
I'm not having you use this as a platform to get work.
I need something.
You don't realise this sitcom is called VPL. He's already got it in there.
He's got it in there. You know what you're doing.
You've got your books, you've got your podcast. Give me my
give him something.
I want you just to work at GB News and be dependent on us forever.
Can I just say one thing I forgot? The most interesting thing about this, really, is to me, is the divide between sort of liberty versus morality, especially on the right. The libertarian side say, of course you can't ban porn, but the more conservative or slightly authoritarian side say we should ban porn.
What do you think, Nick? Do you think we should ban pornography?
Do you know what? I basically do, yeah.
No,
I mean,
you don't.
I pretty much do, because it's just obviously... The thing is, it's obviously... even though there's a civil liberties aspect, it's obviously so destructive for society, isn't it?
Maybe it's destructive for you.
But also, you've got so much saved on your hard drive, right?
I'm good already,
You don't need any news.
He's got his favourites.
OK, let's go on to Saturday's Telegraph. Some high culture fat phobia.
Indeed, Bluey episodes. You know Bluey, Dad?
Bluey is the cartoon dog.
Cartoon dog, Australian cartoon, yeah. It's actually very good. I'm forced to watch it with my children. Re-edited to remove fat-phobic weight loss scenes. So there's the dad in it, and he's sort of standing in front of on the way. Oh God, put on a bit of weight, and standing, and then he steps on the scale. And
do dogs care about their weight?
Well, I don't think it's method or it's realistic.
Oh, so I see. It's anthropomorphized.
Yes, I believe
dogs.
that's the big word that you would obviously throw in there. But they've cut the first sort of minute of this thing out, and they just then show the dogs exercising and the kids. Now, interesting enough, as I mentioned earlier, I've just literally today I've come off my date. My wife told me off for going on about the diet in front of the kids because she thinks a similar thing, that it's sort of warping them with giving them false body image ideas or whatever, or making them self-conscious.
Right.
Whereas I would argue that going on a diet is a good way of showing the kids willpower, but also showing them the dangers of, like, look, guys, this is what happens when you eat loads of rubbish.
Yeah, but you don't want kids to think that if they are a bit chubbier that they should be ashamed of that. Or
Yeah, I do, yeah.
You do? OK.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's not...
school.
And also, kids do get bullied for being chubbier at school. Let's not forget that.
But it did work for me, losing weight, although I've not put it back on, but only 20 years later. Look, Andrew, firstly, Bluey looks creepy. He's a weird, creepy-looking dog. Secondly, parents were said to be disappointed by what they saw as toxic messaging, and the parents weighing themselves openly, hating on their bodies was really uncomfortable. Isn't that a bit pathetic? Especially for, like, Australians. I thought they were kind of tough. So I think it's a bit pathetic. There is a line, and the line is Lewis Schaefer calling you at 2 a.m. and calling you fat and ugly. That's the line.
Well, that's workplace bullying. I'm going to look into that.
Thank you. This is fairly minor. I think this is fine.
But isn't it also the other issue?
One last point, though, can I just say? They say... So the bandit, which is Bluey's dad, I think, says, oh, man, I just need to do some exercise. That's completely false. He needs to calorie restrict and he needs to sort his diet, because he can do loads of exercise, it won't help. So it is actually misinformation.
I like to see you screaming at kids.
Yeah.
He's wrong!
Yeah,
Stop
it's calories in, calories out.
Do you think these cartoon dogs should start doing intermittent fasting or that kind of...
Well, I'm saying, he said
keto,
exercise, it's just misinformation. Exercise won't help him, so that's not useful.
I find it odd to have this sort of social justice messaging within cartoons anyway. There was an article in the Pink News last year, and I'm not kidding, it complained that Bluey had a lack of disabled, queer, poor, gender diverse and dogs of colour. And the main dog is blue. Yeah. So I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Why are we even trying to invest cartoons with this stuff?
And the other question is, why are you reading Pink News?
I love it. It's so entertaining. It's just incredible. Anyway, our final breather now. But do come back for pizza, Madonna, life near Mars, and a safe space for Republicans. See you in a second.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day.
I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners. It's your first look at Saturday's newspapers and the story you've all been waiting for from Saturday's Mail. Let me hand you over to our resident condom correspondent, Nick Dixon.
Thank you, Andrew.
The big dog.
Finally
called that for a reason.
Finally giving me my full title. So Durex launches online fitting service for condoms after it emerged that men are too embarrassed to buy smaller sizes. Obviously not an issue for me because I'm celibate, but little joke there I threw in. So, but funnily enough, men are scared to buy the small ones, but they're actually scared to buy the larger sizes as well, weirdly. They're just embarrassed across the board. They're just English. Another thing that can come up is that they're too tight width-wise. So I've heard. And what they have is a special wide fitting, like New Balance trainers. You can get a special...
So what's the solution that you can sort of get specific measurements?
It's bespoke. You do it online and you pick from various sizes online. That's basically what it is. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's better than nothing. But, of course, the ultimate ideal is still... no sex before marriage, and then just unprotected, let God's will.
They've got this new condom range. This is really to advertise their new condom range. It's their thinnest one ever. This new condom range, it's called Married.
Oh. Married.
It's meant to simulate what it's like to be in a long-term relationship. And but there's some interesting things here. Number one is that it turns out that men orgasm 4 times as much as women, and I only do it once. So I'm a bit confused. I feel like I've been doing it wrong.
I think we're going to move on because I'm concerned where this is going.
You're concerned about the 5 a.m.
repeat. That actually they already sell different condom sizes around the world. They don't really talk about this, but the condoms that you buy in Africa are larger than in Europe and larger also than Asia.
Why?
Why do you think?
I'm not going to go there. Anyway, Josh. Now, what's The Guardian got to say about the coolest neighbourhood in the world?
They're saying that they need to stop it being cool or something. I don't know.
I understand that, yeah.
World's coolest neighbourhood threatened by Danish ghetto law. It's quite interesting that in Copenhagen, the government has been accused of racism because it's an anti-ghetto law. And the idea is 80% of their lawmakers brought it in, so it's a very popular law. But the idea is that when immigrant communities move in, and they all congregate together, which is natural, and that's always the way it's worked across all different countries because they support each other and but it makes sense. But the idea is that they're not necessarily assimilating. So this is to break up these communities. So you have, in some places, and this is, again, around the world, you would have people just speaking their language. There might even be British expats in Saudi Arabia.
So there's a broader
They all
idea
hang out
here,
together.
Nick, isn't there, that multiculturalism isn't working? You're creating parallel societies, and that's not good.
Right, I know, and we struggle to say it in this country, but actually in Denmark, you think of as kind of lefties, and actually their leader is a social democrat. It's incredibly popular across the board trying to stop this sort of ghettoisation. Although, the rule is that you can't, the social housing stock in the area must be no more than 40% of the total. Still pretty high, isn't it? So some people are complaining and saying, oh, this is terrible and racist. It's like 40% is quite high. But yeah, what's interesting is it's across the board popular to bring in these measures because they just, like you say, multiculturalism hasn't really worked as we were told.
Not all the time. Sometimes it works really well.
We do have to move on to the Telegraph now. This is a story about Titania. What kind of stupid name is that, Josh?
Indeed, yes. Should we talk about your other jobs?
No.
Sell more stuff. OK. Aliens could be hiding on 4 moons of Uranus, one of them being Titania, Oberon, Umbriel and Ariel. And the idea is that they're looking at some of the footage that was actually shot sort of 1986, Voyager 2.
Yes.
And they've realised that they go down so deep, these wells, in these big craters, that there could well be big oceans underneath the ice.
So what kind of aliens are we talking? Fish kind of
Yeah,
aliens?
like microorganisms and whatnot. But it is interesting that it turns out they've got like some sort of internal heat source which is keeping this as a liquid as opposed to going into an ice. And they don't know where it's coming from because normally gravity will affect like these different planets and that will give them the heat source. Anyway, it turns out that they don't know.
Nick, any quick thoughts on aliens?
Well, my quick thought is that they're saying they could be in the water. They're already in the ocean on Earth. Tucker Carlson's revealed that there's UFOs underwater. Check out, it's in the Full Send podcast. We already have aliens in the ocean.
OK, well, we'll quickly do this last story. This is the Express and people looking for a safe space from the Coronation, Nick.
Oh, we should have ended on the other one. Yeah, this is just a pub band's flag waving and all Coronation mentions to create anti-royal safe space. It's an Irish guy, basically, Andrew, who's not getting involved in the Coronation.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it's treason, that's all.
Surely people should be allowed, Josh, if they don't want to participate in the Coronation. Well, it's a free country.
There's a market out there, yeah, sure. I mean, it just sounds like he just couldn't be bothered to do anything. He's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to actually make... It's like turning a negative into a habit. Oh, I haven't bought the bunting.
Yes.
You know what, I'm going to make it anti-bunting.
It is a bit curmudgeonly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place near where I live where they've got Mexican flags everywhere. So it's black, it's red, white and blue all down the street and then Mexican flags.
Is it a Mexican restaurant?
Actually, it is a Mexican restaurant.
OK, well...
That solves that one. OK, well, the show's nearly over. Josh Howie. Right, let's have a look at Saturday's front pages before we close. The Daily Mail are leading with His Day of Destiny. The Telegraph are running with I come not to be served, but to serve. And The Guardian have a crushing result for the Tories. The Mirror are going with he will not only wear the crown, he will bear the weight of destiny and the hopes of a nation. And The Times has King's Day of Destiny. And finally, The Star makes it a little bit cuter by bringing in an Irish wolfhound. Sausages. Those were your front pages. That is all we've got time for. Thanks to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Do join us tomorrow at 11 o'clock with some other people. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, do stay tuned for breakfast. See you later.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, fellow subjects. It is 7 o'clock and I am Lawrence Fox. I am here live from Buckingham Palace, keeping you up to date with all the latest Coronation build-up. And having met some of the royal fans, the atmosphere here is wonderful. There is news around, so we will be looking at the England local election results with Professor Matthew Goodwin later in the show. That's all coming up after headlines with Bethany Elsie.
Hello, good evening. I'm Bethany Elsie with your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Conservatives continue to suffer heavy losses in the local elections in England, with 207 out of 230 councils having declared their results. Labour has so far gained control of 20 councils, including East Staffordshire and Swindon, while the Liberal Democrats have gained 10. The Tories have lost 42 councils, including Stratford-on-Avon, where former Tory party chair Nadeem Zahawi is MP, while the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has admitted that the results are disappointing.
The message I am hearing from people tonight is that they want us to focus on their priorities and they want us to deliver for them. And that's about halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists and stopping the boats. That's what people care about, that's what they want us to deliver, and that's what I and the government are going to work very hard to do.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer believes the Labour Party is on track to win a majority in the next general election.
We've just taken Medway for the first time since 1998. That is a very, very good night for the Labour Party. And it's the same story elsewhere. Same story in Plymouth, in Stoke, up in Middlesbrough. And these are the key battlegrounds as we go into the next election.
And the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davies, said the Conservatives should be worried.
These are some of our best ever results. They give us a great foundation for the next general election. There'll be Conservative MPs across the blue wall seats, across many of these areas, who will be really, really worried now that the Liberal Democrats could beat them at the next general election.
The top news story this evening. On the eve of the King's coronation, the King and the Prince and Princess of Wales have greeted well-wishers on the Mall.
Congratulations, you look much younger in the flesh. And best of luck for tomorrow.
King Charles made a surprise appearance to meet with some of the thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace. William and Kate joined the King for the walkabout. They praised the party atmosphere on the Mall and described the coronation as a great moment of celebration. The trio shook hands and took selfies with the crowds, and there were cheers of God Save the King. The royalists who've been camping out hoping to catch a glimpse of history being made this weekend have described it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
We were literally just walking back to the hotel, and then we just saw everybody cheering and came over, and then saw the King.
And I got a shake of the hand. You got a shake of the hand?
Yeah, through the crowd, and I got a shake of the hand.
Did you shake his hand?
No, unfortunately I didn't, but anyway, it was still nice to see him. Come from Belfast to see him.
It's my birthday tomorrow, and I saw the King today.
And in other news, the World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 no longer represents a global health emergency. It's a step towards the end of a pandemic that has killed nearly 7 million people globally. But the director insisted that countries should not let down their guard, warning the virus is here to stay. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now, though. Let's get back to Lawrence.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. It's so easy to look back after an event and see exactly when seemingly inconsequential incidents had a huge impact on consequences. Now everyone has the gift of hindsight, but perhaps a far rarer skill is foresight, an anticipation of how a series of seemingly inconsequential events can alter the future as we know it. Tomorrow we will wake to a new dawn and a new king. Change met with both excitement and trepidation. I'm reminded of a poem called The Convergence of the Twain by Thomas Hardy, lines on the loss of the Titanic. In a solitude of the sea, deep from human vanity and the pride of life that planned her, stilly couches she. Steel chambers late the pyres of her salamandrine fires, cold currents thrid and turn to rhythmic tidal lyres. Over the mirrors meant to glass the opulent, the sea worm crawls, grotesque, slimed, dumb, indifferent. Jewels in joy designed to ravish the sensuous mind lie lightless, all their sparkles bleared and black and blind. Dim moon-eyed fishes near gaze at the gilded gear and query, what does this vaingloriousness down here? Well, while was fashioning this creature of cleaving wing, the imminent will that stirs and urges everything prepared a sinister mate for her, so gaily great, the shape of ice, for a time far and dissociate. And as the smart ship grew in stature, grace and hue, in shadowy silent distance grew the iceberg too. Alien they seemed to be. No mortal eye could see the intimate welding of their later history, or sign that they were bent by paths coincident on being a non-twin halves of one august event. Till the spinner of years said now, and each one hears, and consummation comes and jars two hemispheres. Now many will eye this coronation with a sense of joy and anticipation, much as I imagine those setting off on the maiden voyage of the Titanic did, of new possibilities, great leaps forward in progress and modernity, of unsinkable ships, masters of all the oceans. And yet with hindsight we know that the Titanic was not indeed unsinkable, and in her vainglorious haste to set a record time to New York, those lacking in foresight determined that she would succumb to the overwhelming forces of nature. She had no answer to the spinner of the years. Now what one wonders, does the spinner of years have planned for this august event? An unsinkable king on his maiden voyage, so different from the humble, sturdy yet cautious vessel he replaces. Whatever your views on the monarchy, it is in times of rapid change that many find comfort in tradition and constancy. Hundreds of thousands will line the streets of London to watch this ceremony in awe and adulation, and others will have very, very different views, but that is Britain. We live in shifting tides. The strong, confident Britain remains, but it has been weakened from within, quietened slightly, as bad actors claw one-sidedly through our history to demean and decry the nation. A righteous self-flagellation is in process, and one hopes that with foresight, our future king is uniquely placed to unite this quietly unfurling kingdom, as his mother did so wonderfully before him. There are already positive signs. After all, a constitutional monarch relieves Britain from having to listen to some swanky little Napoleon like Emmanuel Macron. King Charles hasn't allowed the love of his life to be sidelined during these celebrations. Instead, she is front and centre to the proceedings, reflecting a modern Britain which recognises, upholds and affirms adult human females. King Charles has stood up to the whims of a demanding actress and her servile husband, despite a haranguing from the media. And in William and Kate, we see strong green shoots of hope and humble service. There is optimism in this green and pleasant land. And should he choose to, King Charles III could have the adoration and the love of the whole country. But he must choose. Like the Titanic, whether to arrive serenely into New York Harbour safely or to rush towards progress and meet a cold and bleak end at the hands of the icebergs which await him as he navigates the passage of his reign. King Charles is, after all, no Queen Elizabeth, the twinkle-eyed but tight-lipped stoic who steered us safely through those many years. King Charles is political and is progressive. One hopes that in modernising the modern monarchy, like a Titanic racing for New York, he doesn't sink it in the process. To navigate the icebergs of progress, he would do well to renounce his association with the World Economic Forum, to pledge his allegiance to his people and the nation rather than one to a world government, to promote meritocracy, to remind his people that they are in charge of their own destiny, not bad Bond villains in Switzerland. He should cease his forays into the arena of climate change. The climate has been so heavily politicised, and his impartiality in the face of this debate must be welcomed. If he does this, he wins our trust. It is with sincerest hope that our King uses his foresight and wisdom and, God willing, a long and successful reign. He has the nation behind him today. And if he is to chart a new course, as is his right, to do so with caution and respect for the 1200 years which came before. King Charles has just, in the last few minutes, left Buckingham Palace behind me, and it's weird being here presenting at my own coronation. God save the King. Emily Ferguson is the digital royal editor of the Daily Express and is with me throughout the show this evening. Emily, obviously you weren't around for the last coronation. Who was? But tell us, how will tomorrow differ from the late Queen Elizabeth?
So it's going to be very different to the late Queen Elizabeth. It's going to be a lot smaller in scale and in time. So the Queen Elizabeth invited over 8,200 guests to her coronation. We're only going to see about 2,000 there tomorrow. So that's a significant sailing back. And also the timing is going to be very different. So the service last time lasted over 4 hours. It's just going to be 2 hours this time. And as well, the coronation procession significantly pared back also. It was 5 miles last time, now it's only 1.3. It's going to take about 30 minutes to 45 minutes for them to travel both ways by Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey and on reverse. And then also we're going to see the differences quite symbolically as well with the Buckingham Palace balcony. So the Queen Elizabeth was quite famously invited a lot of people onto the balcony for hers, but King Charles is going to follow her later precedent and invite only senior working royals onto the.
So why is it smaller? Is it smaller because we're saving the planet for King Charles and his carbon? Or is it smaller because he's just less cool?
I think we're being a bit mindful as well, because there's been a lot of criticism. Do we really want the scale of this event during a cost of living crisis? There's been a lot of criticism, a lot of money's being spent of it, and people are saying, could this not be spent elsewhere? So I think he's quite mindful of that he does need to scale down and appease the critics, really.
But if you're going to be mindful, why not just cancel it and turn up to Westminster Abbey, have someone give you the crown and... how heavy is the crown?
The crown is £5, so it's very heavy. But
£5, 2.5 kilos in new money. But so when he's doffing his cap to the Woke Brigade, why doesn't it fall off?
Oh, it's very funny. It's sized perfectly to his head. There's been loads of preparations for this. It's not going to fall off.
Okay. So tell me, what are you a royalist?
I am a royalist.
Yes. What percentage of the people do you think are royalists?
Well, there was a survey.
A lot of people don't know.
Just out here right now. I would say a good solid 60-70%.
Yeah.
I'm confident. Yeah.
Are you sensing some Republican sentiment, or some, what's the point in what do you think the change is here? Because obviously Queen Elizabeth she's irreplaceable, really. She just dealt with it. But King Charles is, as I said in my opening, he is quite political. Do you think he's going to rein that back in, and he's going to be a bit more?
I think we've already started to see a little bit of a shift, because in his 70 years waiting for this moment, he was very political. We all know that. But he knows very much that as monarch, you have to rein it in. Your job is head of state. He's leaving the politicisation to his son, Prince William. He's taking the mantle of environmentalism. But he still loves it. He's still very passionate about this cause. So he's not throwing it to one side completely. And there is criticism for that.
And what do you think about King Charles, being defender of faiths rather than defender of the one true Christian faith?
I think that's in keeping with 2023. There's not just one faith now. We're a multicultural society, and it's just reflective of who we are now, whereas we're very different to when 1923.
Okay, so following on your logic of the fact that we're a multicultural, woke society, and King Charles is bowing his crown to them, if there was ever an example, and you believed in the divisive rubbish of identity politics, if there was ever an example of a privileged white male, surely King Charles is it. So why is he bowing to the woke mob?
Well, he has to. He has to reflect society as it is. He is the pivotal person for us. He has to take every aspect of Britain and reflect it as much as he can.
And so you talk about multiculturalism. I would say multiculturalism is a failure. Multiracialism is wonderful. I mean, multiculturalism is great in terms of food and stuff like that, but it's pointless to try and marry different religions and faiths into underneath one culture, which was built under a Christian value system. So would he be better to turn around and, instead of trying to appease the people that want to, diminish what Britain is and the values of Britain, would he be better to stand up and proudly state, this is Britain, this is what we stand for, and, come follow us and become part of our great nation?
But that's not the role of what the king is. He shouldn't really be standing up to people. He is reflecting Britain as it is today.
Well, but he shouldn't really stand for anything, should he? He should be impartial and constitutional monarch. So my thing is, he talks about uniting us through our diversity. And I'm like, how can you unite people through diversity? Because diversity is difference, isn't it? So how do you unite people through difference?
But he's acknowledging those differences. If he was to just be the defender of the one faith, then you're alienating so much of society as it is today. So by trying to incorporate that a little bit, he's acknowledging that Britain is a very different place. We've got all these different religions, and they're a much bigger part of Britain and the world as it is now.
And do you think that, do you sense that the country is behind him, and that he's got a fair wind and sail behind him?
He has. I think he does still have a lot of backing, but it has significantly dropped since Queen Elizabeth. As we've just been saying, she was our one true monarch, really. She was on the throne for over 70 years. Everyone knew and loved the Queen, really. The King hasn't quite got that standing as Queen Elizabeth does. It's going to take some time, but I think with time he will get more support going forward.
And do you think he should... what I was saying, he's obviously got his own page on the World Economic Forum website, and he's very much into environmentalism, which is now a sort of religion and certainly a political movement. Do you think he would benefit himself and the country to step back from political posturing?
Yeah, I think that has to be the way. That is one of his main criticism, and has been for decades, really. His political involvement. I mean, it emerged 20 years ago about the handwriting, the notes that he gave to prime ministers, trying to influence policy. He needs to really rein that in. We are seeing a change, but I think he probably does need to step back a little bit. Just last month he gave a speech where he brought into environmentalism again. Again, he received criticism. For him to move forward, I think he does need to drop that to one side.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that we're in a strange period in history, and actually a coronation may be a very unifying thing, but this idea that this constant haranguing of diversity and it being our greatest strength and all these things, actually our greatest strength as human beings is that we're all human beings, rather than diverse human beings. You put so much emphasis on diversity, 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 but actually what unites us? And do you think he can gather us up? Because I think, my view, is he's going to have the nation behind him 100%. If he can ditch the politics, ditch the environmentalism, ditch the World Economic Forum and serve his people. Is that his job?
It is his job, but I think tomorrow we're going to see just the amount of support that is behind him. There's going to be thousands of people here behind us. They're going to be flocking from 6 a.m. We've had people there for days, almost weeks, camping out. So I think that shows the amount of strength he has got for what he is doing now.
He's what a poison chalice, but what an amazing gig as well at the same time. Anyway, now look, you are watching and listening to GB News live from Buckingham Palace, which is over there. Lots more coming up on tonight's show. Still to come, do the local England election results spell the beginning of the end for the Conservatives? And more coronation chat with the lovely Emily Ferguson, digital editor of The Express. Back in 3!
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Coronation Eve and the countdown to the biggest constitutional event of the century so far. And on Mark Dolan Tonight, we've got ringside seats live at the Palace with top pundits, royal biographers and the best journalists in the country. So bring a bottle or maybe even a flag and I'll see you from 8 till 11 on GB News.
Welcome back. London is heaving with royal fans, and the GB News auto cue doesn't work, so I'm just going to have to talk as I talk. We're going to go to Paul Hawkins. That's why I get sheet paper like this. Is Paul there? Paul?
Yeah, we're down
no,
the mile where it's getting busier and busier throughout the day, to be honest. Earlier today, definitely the highlight, of course, the King turning up on the Mall, and then Kate and William as well. There was a lot of excitement. It's quite funny, actually, at the beginning of the day, there were all these dignitaries and important cars putting up, and everyone was getting their phones out. By the end of the day, people were just moaning about it because it was more of an inconvenience, because it meant that people couldn't get round, because obviously as the cars come through they have to close all the crossings, which holds everyone up, just like everyone's being held up here actually at the moment. So people finding the dignitaries' cars actually a bit of a nuisance right now, but that's okay because people are in good spirits from all over the world, all over the country. Let's speak to some of them now. Hello guys, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Sophie.
Sophie, where have you come from?
Come down from Epsom in Surrey today.
Okay, not too far. Why did you feel you have to be here?
Well, it's a day of history. Obviously, we've done the Queen's funeral, and you know, we just want to be here for this specific day. It's an occasion where everyone's coming together to celebrate a bit of British history, really.
Yeah.
And we want to be part of it.
Yeah. What have you seen today?
We saw King Charles go in and out.
Did you get close?
No.
Okay.
Just up to the barrier and saw the
That's
car.
pretty cool. Yeah, that's got to be a highlight, right?
Well, we're seeing better tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully. What bit are you looking forward to tomorrow?
Just watching the procession, seeing the coach, and just the atmosphere, really.
Yeah. What is it about these kind of occasions, though, that really is exciting for you? I know we talk about it being British and full of pomp, but what is it about this kind
Humanity.
of... Oh, really? Okay, can you expand on that?
Yeah, I literally met these guys at the funeral, at the Queen's funeral. There's another 7 arriving, and we literally become friends from the funeral.
So you almost, that's fascinating because...
That's all from the funeral.
Because I know down there was another group who also met at a funeral and then created a WhatsApp group called the Queen Elizabeth. Did you do the same?
It was called the funeral group, and now we've changed it to Charlie's Coronation.
And have you guys stayed in touch since the funeral?
Yep. Yes. And one of our friends has actually flown in from LA.
So when we say it brings the country together and it's come together, literally this is the best example of it.
It's amazing.
Together.
Yeah, we've got
the world.
a whole new group of friends now.
Yeah.
So, and like next year, we're saying we're all going to meet up and do something all together in London.
There's no jubilee, no coronation, nothing.
No.
Hopefully no funeral, hopefully.
But yeah, we're going to keep in touch, and we've all come from different parts of the country. Lorraine's come from Eastbourne down the coast. We've got people coming in from Yorkshire, Stansted,
Warrington.
Southampton, LA.
Yeah.
So they're coming from all over just to come here, and we'll gather together and meet up. So yeah.
Any specific part of tomorrow that you're looking forward to? The ceremony, the procession, anything in the procession?
The procession, I think, is going to be amazing.
The gold coach.
A lot of people have said that, haven't they?
I want to see that one.
Would you like to go in the gold coach? Because I heard it's not a very comfortable ride.
It's proper bumpy, isn't it?
With the potholes nowadays, you know,
Well,
it's not good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm used to the bumpy ride if you see my car. Hey, listen, thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Cheers, guys. Enjoy tomorrow, yeah? Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, so that gives you a little flavour. And as I say, we've heard that a lot, that a lot of groups of people met during the funeral, they've stayed in touch and they've come together again for the coronation. So a real tangible example of how these kind of big national events, especially when they're around the monarchy, have brought people together.
Yeah, and also I was listening to stuff about potholes, so it means royalists are based. Now, Paul, tell me, speaking of visiting dignitaries, have you seen a orange-haired dignitary? Perhaps a son of the king?
A son of the king? No, I haven't. No, to be honest. I do know that a few people with orange hair have been mistaken for the son of the king, so I've heard.
Right, but overwhelmingly the atmosphere down there is happy and go lucky, and we're excited about the coronation to come.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Yeah, real sense of community, a lot of positivity. People, it's quite funny. I was talking to a couple of people on the other side of the road, and someone stopped them and said, "Excuse me, are you the Texan ladies?" And they went, "No, they're 3 trees down on the left." That's the extent of the familiarity that people have with one another now, knowing people by names, knowing people by where they come from, and kind of referring to them as if they were next door neighbours. Kind of like temporary community that's sprung up along the mall. So it's really good to see. Whether you're a fan of the monarchy or not, that's got to be a good thing.
And forgive me for asking like really boring practical questions, but where does one commit one's ablutions or brush one's teeth when one is in a tent on the mall?
Well, you know, take your pick. Some people are going without and just not doing it for a few days. I know a lot of people are sleeping in chairs. You can pop to, there are toilet facilities available that you can go, or, you know, just grab a bottle of water, swill it around in your mouth, brush your teeth that way. People are, I know a couple of people over there, they had their bags stolen from their car. They parked their car in Sloane Square, had their bags stolen out of it, so they're just in the clothes they're in. They've got their tent and a few bits to eat, but people are just getting on with it, really. They're like, you know, it's a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. Just make it work, whatever's going to happen.
Absolutely. Well, what a wonderful thing to see of all these people from across the land and from internationally as well, coming to this wonderful city of ours to see the coronation of our future king. Paul Hawkins, thank you. You're watching and listening to GB News, live from Buckingham Palace with me, Lawrence Fox. Lots more coming up on tonight's show. Still to come, more Coronation chat with the lovely Emily Ferguson, digital editor of The Express, and some election chat with Professor Matthew Goodwin. Back in 3.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin,
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
God save the King. Right, we're back. Emily Ferguson, digital royal editor at the Daily Express, is here with me. Emily, we've covered some of what to expect tomorrow, but what about some of the history behind everything? First of all, I want to ask you the one that really bothers me, which Cass, my producer, calls the stern of Skern, which normal people call the stone of Scone.
Yeah.
What is it?
So Stone of Scone, it's got two names, Stone of Scone and the Stone of Destiny. So it's almost 1,000 years old. It's a block of sandstone, about so big, weighs 125 kilograms, and it goes underneath the coronation chair. So King Charles will be sitting above it when he's crowned, and it's actually got a bit of controversy actually. So it's ancient symbolism of Scottish monarchy. So it was first used by Scottish monarchs many years ago, and then English used it as well, and we kept it down here in England. And in 1950, 4 Scottish students decided they were going to break into Westminster Abbey. They stole it and took it back to Scotland. We brought it back down. It was
How did we bring it back down?
Well, convoy,
SAS?
I imagine, yeah. We brought it back down, was used for 1953 coronation of Queen Elizabeth, stayed here, but in 1996, being our diplomatic queen, she decided, along with John Major, that it was going to return to Scotland, and has done ever since, and it's been brought down again today for tomorrow's coronation.
So this fascinates me about history. It's like pretty much uninterrupted, other than that Cromwell chap. For 1,200 years, we've had a constitutional monarchy in this country. In the eyes of the world, must be honest, going, come on guys, you're doing something right. But throughout that 1,200 years, we've had some Scots, didn't we? We had to nick James from Scotland, didn't we?
Yep.
So it's kind of fair enough. I'm all right returning the stern of Skern to Scotland. But what about the Elgin marbles?
The what, sorry?
The Elgin marbles.
The
Should we
Elgin
not return those to Greece as well?
Well, I think that's for another time.
Anyway, so tell me, what can we expect to happen tomorrow? What's the first thing we're going to see on our TVs?
So the first thing we're going to see on our TVs, it's going to be 6 o'clock in the morning. They're going to be opening the procession route for the crowds. It's going to be en masse. It's going to get busy very quickly. And then from about 9:30 a.m. we're going to get the congregation, we're going to get the members of the royal family, everyone invited is going to be walking into Westminster Abbey slowly. And then from 10 o'clock we are going to get the King and Queen leaving Buckingham Palace and heading down that procession route down to Westminster Abbey. They're going to be travelling in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach. That's the first for a coronation. It's always usually the Golden State Coach.
What's the difference?
So the Diamond Jubilee, nod to our late Queen, obviously it was made for her Diamond Jubilee, and it's also a lot more modern, it's a lot comfier, because the Golden State Coach is traditionally really uncomfortable. At the Queen's coronation in 1953, she had a hot water bottle underneath. Queen Victoria complained terribly as to how uncomfortable it is, so I think that's probably a bit of the reason why they're not using it for both journeys, really.
White privilege, I'd say. So tell me, what's the Pope given?
The Pope?
Come on, what's the Pope given to King Charles?
Well, very interestingly, the Pope has given fragments which is believed to be from the cross that Jesus was crucified on.
Oh, come on.
So these tiny little fragments, they're only 1 centimetre and 5 millimetres, and they're going to be they're put on the Wales cross that's going to be used for the King's procession. They're so small, we're not going to be able to see them.
We're not going to get to see the fragments of the cross
I'm sure
that Christ was crucified
will zoom
on.
in, but it's going to be very minute.
Where's he been keeping those, the Pope? In his bedside table?
Yeah. No, they've been locked away.
And what roles do we expect for Prince William, the one that we dare not speak his name, and the rest of the royal family?
So Prince William, he's going to be the one Duke that's going to pay homage to the King. So he's going to go and kiss the cheek of his father, and that's pretty much, he's going to be in ceremonial robes. Obviously his eldest son, Prince George, he's going to have a very special role at the age of 9. He's going to be a page of honour for the King, one of 8 youngsters, and he's going to be helping carrying his robes on the day. And then the man we have questioned, Prince Harry, he will be there. He will be arriving.
Wait, you said he will be there. You keep saying this with a very
Yeah,
but the more emphatic you are about it, do you know he's here?
We don't know 100% for certain, but he will have arrived today. He's not going to leave it to the last minute. He will have arrived today, but unfortunately it's not been pictured. We don't know 100% certain. But
So you don't want to make a little bet now as to whether Hazard's going to be there? He's there, 100%.
He's here, he'll be there tomorrow.
Okay, and what role will he play in the ceremony?
He will have no official role.
Oh,
He's not a working royal anymore.
Do you like King Charles for putting him and his missus in place? What do you think about that? I think that's quite cool. I feel quite upbeat about it. And I quite like, I tell you what, sorry, this is windy. I really like the fact that the Queen Consort is really held in such high regard regard, because it would have been very easy, and I imagine the establishment would have tried to sort of sideline her in a way, wouldn't they? So I think it's such a great testament to modern Britain that we are, you know, that she is as important as him. They're a union, you know, and that's very important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's taken 20 years to get here. Like 20 years ago, it would have been unimaginable for Camilla to be crowned alongside Charles. So we've really come a long way. And obviously, after the coronation, she's going to be Queen Camilla. She's not going to be Camilla Queen Consort. When they first married in 2005, they said it was going to be Princess Consort. So we've really moved ahead. And
other than trying to get a picture of Prince Harry, or not Prince Harry, he's Duke of Sussex now. Pause. Okay. Other than that, what are you going to be doing for the weekend?
What am I going to be doing? I'm going to be stood behind us right here. I'm going to be getting.
Have you got a special pass?
I've got a special pass. I know.
I can get a special pass. And will you be cheering loudly?
I'll be cheering. I'll probably be shedding a few tears. To be honest.
What about the carriage after?
The
carriage on the way back?
Yeah, carriage on the way back. So they'll be leaving Westminster Abbey at approximately 1 o'clock, and they'll be in the Gold State carriage, as I mentioned before.
The uncomfy one?
The uncomfy one. But it looks magnificent.
Have they upgraded the suspension?
Oh, you'd hope so, but it is very old.
Come on, carriage privilege, honestly. Right, well, look, up next, you went to the polls yesterday, and you cast your votes. Expert analysis from Matt Goodwin, coming up.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain.
Yes. I know the coronation is extremely exciting, but there is other news out there, surprise it or not. And I suspect the Tories are hoping the coronation will cover them from their local England election results. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has acknowledged that some disappointing results, but insists the Tories are making progress in key election battlegrounds. Whilst Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, parties on course to win the next general election. We're doomed. Joining me now is Professor Matt Goodwin, Professor of Politics and International Relations at the University of Kent. Matt, I get the feeling that the results aren't much of a surprise for analysts or anyone such as yourself.
Yeah, well, absolutely, Lawrence. Look, here's the key story. Essentially what's happened is that the Conservative Party is now getting hammered on two flanks at the same time. It's losing a lot of ground in those pro-Brexit red wall areas in the industrial heartlands, and it's also losing considerable ground to Labour and the Lib Dems in parts of southern England. And what I would argue, Lawrence, is that this really reflects a simple fact, which is that the Conservative Party, ever since the Brexit referendum, has never really made a choice when it comes to what kind of party it wants to be. It's never really given those pro-Brexit voters what they wanted to see. It's given them record immigration. It's never really spelled out the benefits of Brexit. It's never really reformed the economy. But it's also antagonised and alienated many of those Remain voters in the big cities, the university towns, and increasingly the areas surrounding London in the commuter belt. So what we're seeing here, Lawrence, is essentially a pincer movement that's now taking place. And to put this in context, really the last time the Conservatives have suffered losses on this scale, about 1,000 local councillor losses, more than 40 councils gone, you really need to go back to the pre-New Labour years in the 1990s. So there's no ducking the fact that this is a very bad night for the Conservatives. There are lots of disillusioned voters out there. There are lots of people that are fed up with politics, that are looking at Rishi Sunak, and also, by the way, Sir Keir Starmer, who's not yet in majority territory, and they're just fed up with all of them.
So essentially what we have, what seems like, is a Conservative Party with it having an identity crisis and a Conservative in name only party. So one would think, logically, that there would be an insurgent party to come into that. But what are the results for Reform UK in these elections, Matt?
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things that's going on here is that on the one hand, if you ask 2019 Conservative voters, look, why have you switched from the party, or why haven't you voted at all? The first issue they say is cost of living, the second is immigration. So there's definitely a lot of space in British politics for parties that are taking the Conservatives on those issues. I think the problem, particularly for Reform at the moment, is that lots of voters don't really know what Reform is. Lots of voters don't really know who the leader is. They've not got that visibility that you did have, for example, in the era of Nigel Farage. There's also, I think, a general sense of exasperation and disillusionment with the country after more than 10 years of Conservative rule. I think people have been worn down by many of the things that they've experienced with public services and so on. So I think underlying all of this is a general sense of apathy, and you can see that in the Labour performance. I mean, look, no matter what Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are saying today, the blunt reality is that they don't yet have the numbers to get into majority power. They're a little bit short. They're about 9 points ahead in the national vote. They really need to be 12, 13 points ahead to be comfortably in majority territory. And that's despite everything that they've had: inflation, the small boats crisis, Partygate, Trussonomics. There is still something that isn't connecting between the Labour Party and much of the country. And I suspect many people watching this show would probably share that sense that, Keir Starmer seems like he's more competent than Jeremy Corbyn, but they don't yet feel that there's a positive endorsement or a real enthusiasm for the opposition. So we're in this state of affairs, a sort of interregnum, if you like, where we're waiting for new things to emerge and we're watching old things struggle. And I think that's where we are at the moment in British politics.
That's very interesting. Do you think that there's a sense among the voting public that you vote Labour or Conservative and you're just voting for alternate cheeks of the same backside?
Well, there's not really that much between them. I mean, if you look at the new consensus in British politics at the moment, you know, what is it? It's comfortable with large-scale immigration, you know, talking about a big state, throwing more money at public services, not talking that much about reforming public services. There's not really that much between Labour and the Conservatives when it comes to economic strategy, industrial policy, education. I mean, you know, the differences are fairly small compared to earlier periods in British politics. And I think when you look at those 2019 Conservatives, Lawrence, you know, a lot of those voters were, you know, hard workers, technicians, electricians, plumbers, had often not passed through the universities, working class. Those are the voters that have really abandoned the Conservatives in those northern areas. And what do they want? You know, they want less immigration. They want Brexit to be much more than it's currently envisaged to be. They don't want this London-centric economy. They don't want this sort of, you know, new elite in the country lecturing them about all of these identity issues. And I think fundamentally the Conservatives have failed to deliver for that group. So because they've not made any choices, they've not taken really any tough decisions about what they are as a party, they're now being hammered on both flanks. They're losing, you know, those areas in the south, and they're losing these areas in the north. And that's not a sustainable position. I mean, this is going to be, you know, a very difficult general election for Rishi Sunak unless something changes, and changes quickly.
So what, are Labour going to win the next general election, do you think? And does Rishi Sunak have to call it immediately or within the next year?
Well, I imagine Sunak's going to push it back as late as he can, probably to November 24. If you take all the numbers that we've got from these local elections, Lawrence, and you applied them to a general election, and obviously take this with a pinch of salt because, you know, things change. Inflation will come down. You know, we will see the economic environment change over the next year. But what you'd be looking at is a Labour minority government or a Labour-led coalition, some kind of hung parliament territory. And of course, for the Conservatives, it's majority or bust. Nobody's going to work with the Conservatives like we saw in 2017 and so on. So I think what we're heading towards currently is a messy hung parliament, but with Labour as the largest party. And Rishi Sunak will be hoping he can change that, and change that quickly over the next year. But as I say, I mean, you know, you look at the immigration estimates, you look at how stubborn inflation is, you look at the NHS and the scale of the backlog. You know, are voters going to be feeling meaningful differences over the next 12 months? I mean, you know, I'm increasingly pessimistic about the Conservative Party's chances, but that's because I think they failed to respond to the moment that they've had since the Brexit referendum. I just don't think they really know what they are anymore, and I don't think they know how to hold these voters that they've got, and this is now reflected in these local election results.
Absolutely, Matt. One would just posit that maybe the Conservatives